Billy loved adventures. He was always on the lookout for something new and exciting to explore. Whether it was a hidden trail in the forest or a secret garden in his neighborhood, Billy's curiosity knew no bounds. But he never thought he'd find one right next door. One day, while playing in his backyard, he noticed something he had never seen before. It was an old, spooky house that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. An old, abandoned house stood there, dark and mysterious. The windows were boarded up, and the trees around it were overgrown, casting eerie shadows on the ground. It looked like something straight out of a ghost story. It had creaky steps and cobwebs in the windows. The paint was peeling, and the whole place seemed to be falling apart. It was the kind of house that made you wonder what secrets it held. One day, Billy dared himself to go closer. His heart pounded in his chest as he took his first step towards the house. He had always been brave, but this was different. This was real. He tiptoed towards the house. Each step was slow and deliberate, as if he was trying not to wake the house from its slumber. The closer he got, the more he could feel the weight of the house's history pressing down on him. The floorboards groaned under his feet. It was as if the house was alive, reacting to his presence. Every creak and groan made his heart race faster. Each step made him feel more nervous. He could feel the sweat on his palms and the lump in his throat growing bigger. What if something was waiting for him inside? What was he doing here? He questioned his own bravery. Was this really worth it? The house seemed to be daring him to come closer, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to accept the challenge. What if there were ghosts? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. He had heard stories about haunted houses, but he never thought he'd be standing in front of one. The fear was real, but so was the thrill of the unknown. Billy peeked inside a dusty window. The house was dark and silent. Cobwebs hung from every corner. Suddenly he heard something. "Who's there?" a voice whispered. Billy's heart jumped. He spun around, searching for the source of the voice. Was it the wind? Or was someone hiding inside? He took a step back, fear creeping up his spine. He had to get out of there. Billy ran home faster than he ever had. His heart pounded in his chest and his legs felt like they were on fire, but he didn't slow down. He had to get home and tell someone about what he had heard. He burst through the door, out of breath. His mother looked up from the kitchen, startled by his sudden entrance. But Billy didn't stop to explain. He needed to find his grandma. He found her in the living room, knitting by the fireplace. He told his grandma about the voice he had heard in the old house, the whisper that had sent chills down his spine. She always had stories about the old house. Her eyes grew wide with concern as she listened to Billy's tale. She had heard similar stories before, but never from someone so close to her. "It's the whispering shadow," she said, her voice low. Her words were almost a whisper themselves, as if speaking too loudly might summon the spirit. Some say it's the spirit of a young boy who got lost in the house. He wandered the halls, calling for help, but no one ever came. Now his voice echoes through the walls, searching for someone to hear him. Billy's eyes widened. A ghost? The idea both terrified and fascinated him. He'd always been curious about the old house, but now he felt a strange connection to it. He had to know more. He couldn't just leave it at that. He needed to understand what was happening in that house and why the voice had called out to him. He decided to go back to the house. This time he would be prepared. He would bring a flashlight, maybe even a friend, and he would find out the truth. This time, he wouldn't let fear stop him. He would face the whispering shadow and uncover the secrets of the old house, no matter what it took. The next day, Billy returned to the house. He took a deep breath and knocked on the old wooden door. To his surprise, it creaked open. He stepped inside. "Hello?" he called out, his voice trembling. "Who are you?" the whispering voice asked. It seemed to be coming from the shadows in the corner. Billy slowly walked towards the sound. His heart pounded in his chest. He peered into the darkness, his heart pounding in his chest. The forest was eerily silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves. Every shadow seemed to move, playing tricks on his eyes. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. What could be lurking in the darkness? He had to find out. There, huddled in the corner, was a small, shivering figure. The sight tugged at his heartstrings. The figure was so small, so vulnerable. He took a cautious step forward, not wanting to startle the child. "Hey there," he called out softly. "Are you okay?" It wasn't a ghost at all. The shadows had played tricks on his mind, making him see things that weren't there. He felt a wave of relief wash over him. But who was this child, and why was he here all alone? It was a little boy, about Billy's age, lost and scared. The boy's eyes were wide with fear, and his clothes were dirty and torn. He looked like he had been wandering for hours. Billy's heart went out to him. He knew he had to help. He had been playing hide and seek and got trapped. The game had turned into a nightmare for the poor child. He had hidden so well that no one could find him, and now he was lost in the dark, scary forest. Billy remembered playing hide and seek with his friends and how fun it was, but this was different. "Don't worry," Billy said, a wave of relief washing over him. He reached out a hand to the boy, who hesitated for a moment before taking it. "We'll get you out of here," Billy promised, his voice steady and reassuring. The boy's grip was tight, a silent plea for help. "I'll get you out of here," Billy repeated, more to reassure himself than the boy. He led the way, carefully navigating the dark forest. Every step was cautious, every sound amplified in the silence. The boy followed closely, his trust in Billy growing with each step. Billy led the boy outside into the sunlight. The warmth of the sun was a stark contrast to the cold, dark forest. The boy blinked in the bright light, a small smile forming on his face. They had made it out. The danger was behind them. The whispering shadow wasn't a ghost. It was just a figment of their imagination, a product of fear and darkness. The real danger had been the fear itself, and they had conquered it together. It was just a scared little boy who needed help. And Billy had been there to provide it. He felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. He had faced his fears and helped someone in need. And Billy was glad he could be the one to help him. As they walked back to the village, hand in hand, Billy knew that this was a day he would never forget. It was a day of courage, compassion, and the realization that sometimes the scariest shadows are the ones we create in our minds.